Hello, I'm Krasi Ivanova-Twig, and this is the Global Jigsaw from BBC Monitoring. We are part of the World Service that looks at the world through the lens of its media. We have just done a three-part series on the Kurdish issue, the history of this large ethnic group that doesn't have a country of its own, the Kurdish struggle for rights and self-determination in 4 countries in the Middle East, and we've also looked at the future prospects for peace. Today, I'm going to talk to 2 of our Kurdish colleagues, Giar Gol, who has been reporting for many years from the Middle East for BBC Persian, and Sarbas Nazari, who is now a media analyst for BBC Monitoring's Iran team. Thank you both for joining me. Now, we have covered the Kurdish issue in our 3-part series, but today I wanted to talk to you about the more personal aspects of this story. You know, your Kurdish identity, the difficulties you have faced growing up as Kurds in Iran, in both cases for you. And I wanted to start with you, Sarbas. You grew up in Iran. Did you face any hostilities because you were a Kurd? And how did you navigate those barriers you had in front of you?
Well, I would probably say this is a grievance shared by it's a kind of collective thing shared by the entire Kurdish community in Iran. In fact, when you are born, you are considered by the state, I mean the Islamic Republic, by default as a rebel, and this is something that you have to carry on throughout your life, through your education, through your professional career. And in fact, in a way, I would say that you have to claw your way up for this inclusion and recognition, which makes your life absolutely tough. There are so many challenges on your way when you grow up, especially in these smaller towns where this systematic deprivation, I would say, this systematic marginalization of the Kurdish community is a dominant, in fact, is a dominant theme of your life.
And Giar, you also grew up in Iran. How does that, what Sarbas just described, how does that resonate with you?
From the first day you go to school, you feel actually you are playing in an unequal field. Those people who speak Farsi, who are born into the Persian-speaking family, they have an edge over you. Because me as a Kurdish kid, I don't know the language. I have to go to school. I am struggling actually to learn a language, yet my classmate who speak Farsi easily pick up from day one. So they have an edge over us. They understand the lesson better than us. And I just want to give you, during my time, during my experience, I think I was in the grade 7 or 8 in middle school. One of my classmates in the class spoke in Kurdish, our mother tongue, mother language. The teacher slapped him in the face and said, never again speak Kurdish in my class. That was the kind of environment we grew up. I don't have any first language, unfortunately. I have an accent in Kurdish, in Farsi, in English. It's very obvious. I think there is a lot of limitation.
And yet, look at you both. You became journalists and you have very interesting career paths, different ones. And in your case, Sarbas, you became a journalist and you worked in state media in Iran. And I find that fascinating because we monitor state media in quite a few countries. How we know the message is controlled, but how is it controlled? Can you tell us about what is the method? It's like in Russia, you get the metodichka, which is directly this briefing that comes from the Kremlin and the journalists know what to say, what not to say, what is the editorial line. How do you learn this self-censorship? Does self-censorship play a role in state media in Iran?
Working with state media, you would probably face a daily battle of fighting this systematic censorship, orders coming from above, how to cover a certain story, what language you have to use, what words you should avoid, and all these should be a reflection of the official line very strictly. On a daily basis, you would receive particular guidelines, specific letters coming, for example, from the Supreme National Security Council and other powerful state bodies deciding what angle of a story should be covered, what should not be, what stories should be ignored, and what terminology, for instance, should be used when it comes to the case of adversaries like Israel, the United States, how to cover the situation, for example, in the Middle East, in Gaza. Back then, it was the Arab Spring when I was working there. How to frame these. For instance, there was at this particular time of the Arab Spring, there was a very strict order coming from the above, telling everybody, all the journalists, that this is called Islamic awakening, not the Arab Spring, because they were trying to project the image that had been defined by the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, that this is an Islamic awakening rooted in the Islamic Revolution of 1979 in Iran, because Iran was, as they said, playing a role model for the entire Middle East. So that's quite a clear example of how these lines were in fact imposed on all the journalists. But after some time, you realize that this daily battle, that you have to resist all these pressures, cannot get you anywhere, and you have to find your way out from. In my case, I had to stop at some point and found solutions by working for international outlets as a freelancer in Iran. But the big challenge here is that most of these outlets are not authorized by the state. So when you work for them, you're under this constant fear of getting interrogated, getting arrested, ending up in prison. And it's this lack of permits that under which you have to work is actually pushing you to a state where, again, you have a new stage, which is, okay, this pressure, I cannot live under this forever. So you have to find a way to leave the country, even if this is something which is against your will, because you will be away from the field. You can no longer have the real access to get a first-hand experience up close of what's going on in your country, in your society.
And this is what you did, and clearly that's a very tough environment for journalists. Now, Giar, you work for the BBC, so tell me about that. Did you have any restrictions?
I just want to say I was very young. I left Iran 18 years ago. I joined BBC. So I have been to Turkey. I was assigned 3 times to Turkey. The longest one was 2 years in 2012 and 14, and also in 2017 I went back again as a BBC Persian correspondent in Turkey. I think for a period of time, 2012 and 14, in my opinion, because there was a peace negotiation, it was much easier to work and cover Kurdish story. But after 2013, when the peace process broke down, also there was a red line. Many journalists knew in Turkey if they crossed the Turkish government red line, they will lose their beautiful flat in Istanbul facing Bosphorus. So many people actually, in my opinion, they censored themselves, or they simply didn't touch stories they knew there is sensitivity. In 2017, after the coup, many people were arrested. So any journalist who went to Rojava, to northern Syria, to cover that region, or went to the Kandil mountain to interview the PKK leadership, the Kurdistan Worker Party, in the eyes of Turkey, they were terrorists, and you have meeting terrorists, and many of those journalists were expelled from Turkey, or they were banned entering Turkey when they want to go back. When I came back, I was arrested in Istanbul airport. They wanted to deport me to Iran. It could be equal to execution. And I remember I always had a text ready in my phone. Whenever I was going through the passport control, I had that text at the time arranged with BBC. Everybody knew it's a matter of time because many people were arrested. And I remember when the passport control officer stamped my passport, and suddenly I think something came up on his monitor, and he put aside my computer, my passport, and picked up the phone. I immediately sent a text. I think I'm arrested. And then if it wasn't for British Embassy and BBC, they wanted to deport me to Iran, yet I was traveling on my British passport. I remember the Deputy High Commissioner of British Embassy said, I'm not trying to bring you in. I just want to make sure they put you on a right plane. Eventually, after 7 hours detention, I was deported to Iraqi Kurdistan because I flew from there. So since then, I have been banned entering Turkey. And I know many journalists who really refuse to follow the red line to cover stories, what's happening, particularly the Kurdish region. Foreigners, I'm not talking about the Kurdish journalists, they have been banned. And many journalists who had a dual national, Turkish, let's say British or Turkish German, they were held in prison for months or not years, if not years. And I was lucky, I wasn't Turkish national, so they deported me.
And Sarbas, tell me about your covering the Kurdish story when you were back in Iran. You said it was quite risky. Can you give me an example of what you had to do? What were the stories you covered?
When I was working for state media, there was absolutely no room for Kurdish stories. None, I would say. Absolutely none. But working as a freelancer, I found the chance to reflect part of these grievances that I had grown up with, and my family, my environment, all the Kurdish community had been suffering throughout ages. A couple of these stories were focused on the issue of kolberi, which is this profession which is considered as smuggling by the government, in which jobless Kurdish people would port commodities across the border from Iraq into Iran. This is, in fact, the final resort to tackle poverty, to make ends meet. In these particular cases, I went to the mountains where they were doing this. I had no permit from the state because it was illegal to cover stories like that because of the sensitivities of the matter, and particularly the unease of the Islamic Republic with foreign outlets. They would say that this is black, as they say, black propaganda against the state. So it was a risky mission for myself as well. So I went there to get a first-hand touch of what was going on, to get the color. I interviewed many people about their suffering, what challenges they were facing. There were so many. I was surprised to see so many teenagers, like minors, who were doing this. Tiny bodies carrying those huge and very heavy commodities, like, for instance, a refrigerator, a huge TV, and to cross into the border to get a tiny amount of money to support their families.
Did you go to the Iranian border?
Yeah.
I have traveled there from the other side.
Oh, you've covered the same story, but from the other
I
side.
remember actually once I give them camera, because I couldn't go back to Iran. I give all those smugglers camera to film while they are going back. So they cross the border. Sometimes they bring petrol on their back from Iran, because petrol in Iran is subsidized. So they bring it to Iraqi Kurdistan, they sell it, and then take goods like tires, vehicle tires, or many different things, cosmetic or whiskey or beer in Iran is obviously banned. So they go back. I give them a camera. But the security for the border guards, not just shooting at we call them kolbert, those people who carry on their back, if you translate it, they were shooting their mules, killing the horses and mules. And the footage they brought back to us, it was shocking. You could see it was like a slaughterhouse. Numbers, I'm talking about 15, 20, 25, some valleys, horses has been killed. Because for those smugglers, that's their only property they have. They put those goods on the back of the horse in this mountainous terrain. It's very dangerous also. There is a lot of mines left from Iran-Iraq war era, and many of them, they step over and then they lost limb, they have been killed, or many of them killed by avalanche. But on top of it, Iranian border guard, they don't hesitate to shoot them. Every year, scores of them are being killed. And many of them simply, they just want to feed their family. They have a dignity not to go to steal. They just say, we're taking this dangerous route simply for a few dollars to feed their families. And I remember a few years ago, we did a story. I went there. I was very surprised to see well-educated people. I'm talking about a master's degree from the best university in Iran. They couldn't find a job. And then I saw an old man. His face was almost disfigured. And I asked him, he was carrying a tires. I said, you walking through this mountain is heavily snowed. There was snow there. How do you get there? And I tried to carry his load actually for a few minutes. I fall on the ground actually. And it created a lot of buzz in Iranian parliament. I mean, they were so embarrassed. The MPs from that region went there, pretty much tried to imitate what we did. But I think in the end of the days, actually, the stories you bring back there, it has an effect on Iranian regime. Even at the time, they said, oh, we will do something about it.
But at least reporting of the sort would have caused them some embarrassment and facing accountability at least.
I was going to say exactly that it's a testament for the work that journalists do, even in countries like Iran.
Yeah, our report went out on BBC, not just Persian, in English as well. And I remember I get a text message from someone. It was clearly, he was Iranian agent. He said, I knew where you were. Exactly, he gave the address of the house in the village I stayed that night. Exactly, gave which people. He said, but the order, we didn't have an order to arrest you, but next time we arrest you. I think he was lying because later they found out where I was staying. Because normally when I go there, nobody knows I'm in the region. I do my news gathering, filming, and then come back to London, editing maybe a week or 2 weeks later. We broadcast it. That's why, but he said he knew I was there. But they had a mercy on me, not to arrest me.
But this also shows that in these kind of dangerous, risky missions, you have to use your creative ways. You have to resort to all kinds of different methods to get to the stories, to be able to show
Shut down the Department of Fear and Logic.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that too, I can imagine. I wanted to ask you about how you recently managed to interview a commander from the PKK. And we discussed this on the podcast, and I wanted to just lift the curtain a little bit more about how this interview was done. And just so we are clear on this, the PKK are considered a terrorist organization by the US, the UK, the EU. And as such, we can't just go and interview them. We need clearance from a department called editorial policy.
Yeah, I think beforehand, even you approach them, you have to
before you even approach them. But then this is the interesting bit. How do you approach them? Do you have contacts there who, on your phone, WhatsApp, who feed you lines every now and then? How does it work?
I have covered the Turkey-Kurdish conflict for many years. I interviewed PKK leader. I went to the mountain. In the past, when there was a ceasefire, it was much easier. You go there, they keep you in a house in some village. It takes time. Unknown, they take all your stuff and then suddenly show up somewhere else or put your stuff on the pickup truck, go here to interview. But this time around, because the war is continuing, the bombing, particularly the drone technology, has been the one everybody afraid to go to that region. I remember I talked to a contact, the spokesperson. I knew him. I texted him. I said, okay, Öcalan have issued this statement calling on you to lay down arms, dismantle PKK. I would love to hear what's your position. Is it possible for me and come and interview you? He said, it's impossible because dangerous for you and dangerous for our leader as well. I said, because of the drone attack and the surveillance. So is it possible to do a online interview like Skype or via FaceTime, whatever means? He said impossible, even with telephone, because they were worried there may be a electronic surveillance. And then he said, send me your question. So I sent the question. It took a few 5 or 6 weeks to get back to me. So they posed the question and he answered it. And one thing I just want to say about this question you just raised about Syria, the British Special Forces, French Special Forces, US Special Forces, side by PKK commander, were fighting ISIS.
So Sarbas, I wanted to ask you, listening to all of this, GR's risky missions, reporting from the Middle East, how do you feel about your current job? Because you're very much chained to the desk, monitoring Iranian state media. You don't have any restrictions. You can say whatever you want, but do you have the urge to, hit the road and be there where the story is?
There's absolutely no doubt about that. But as you rightly mentioned, there are pros and cons with this new chapter of my career. The best thing about it is that you're away from the state restrictions that you actually fled from in Iran, and all the limitations that you are facing on a daily basis are not there anymore. You're sitting down, focusing on your stories. You have enough freedom to reflect what's going on in there. But the biggest challenge here is this lack of access. You can't reflect the real color of what's going on there. The empathy that you had with your interviewees, for instance, back in Iran, is missing, absolutely missing. When you are in the field, that's a totally different story. The vibe, the color, the mood that you are reflecting when you're interviewing those people in the very heart of the story makes it quite different, stand out from stories when you do behind your desk comfortably in London.
Sarbas said he left Iran, he does have that freedom. Working in the BBC Persian doesn't mean we don't have the challenges or Iranian regime just lay back or let them to do their job. Just last year, the head of MI5, British Security Service, he said there was 20 plots against Iranian national here in United Kingdom since 2022, primarily targeting Farsi-speaking journalists living in United Kingdom. And many of our colleagues have been warned they might be the target. Many of our family members on a daily basis, whenever we have a report, even I'm not talking about the Kurdish issue, any issues related to Iran, if the regime doesn't like it, they summon our family members to intelligence service, interrogate them, intimidate them, detain them sometimes, in order to put pressure on our journalism here. But many of our colleagues, seems to me, doesn't work because here we are. We continue to work.
Indeed, even this country can be a hostile environment. This is a well-covered story. And GR, when you're listening, Sarbas talk about the closeness to the story. And of course, you have reported throughout the years from the Middle East on this story, from Syria, from Iraq. You mentioned you've been to Rojava. I just wonder, when you go there, how easy is it to get access, and how easy is it to get people to open up to you?
First of all, reaching there is very difficult, and all it depends the relation between two factions of the Kurds in Iraqi Kurdistan or in north of Syria, Rojava. I remember in 2000, if I'm not wrong, it was 2017, because the relationship wasn't good, they shut down the border. So I have to, in the Kurdish region, use smuggling routes to reach to Rojava and go cover Manbij, the fight against ISIS. But this time around, the latest we went there, obviously the relationship is improving, and it's much easier for journalists to go to that region. So we get the permission from Iraqi Kurdistan, cross over Tigris River, that ancient river, and go there. And obviously, during the past, I would say since 2012, first time I went to Rojava, still Bashar Assad army was present there. Still there was a sign of them. We were undercover. We went to Rojava to see what was going on during the Arab Spring. And during this year, they have seen you. You have been covering there and telling the truth. And when you go back, obviously, is sometimes difficult to get the official on camera to talk about the subject because of the political implication or the danger of being hit by Turkish drone overhead. So it was very, very difficult. For example, getting General Abdi, the commander of Syrian Democratic Forces, was very difficult. Eventually, they agreed to talk to me in a place very close to US base. Later, I found out, because they knew Turkey wouldn't hit a place which is very close to US military base in Hasaka, in northeast of Syria. I think genuinely, when you talk to people, treat them like a gold. Treat them, your story matters. We are here to listen to you, and hopefully they will see what's happening here, bad or good. I mean, you ask every question. But I think over the year, people, they trust you, but overall BBC has a trust. I think it's not just me. Numbers of BBC journalists from English service outlets or Arabic or other languages have been to Rojava, have been covering there. I think BBC has that trust in that region. And obviously the authorities and the people there, they love to talk to BBC because they know we have a wider audience and their voice might be heard better.
Ziar Gol and Sarbas Nazari, thank you very much. And thank you for watching. If you're interested in finding out more about this story, you can check out and listen to our 3-part series. And in the meantime, do get in touch. We love to hear your ideas or feedback. Our email address is theglobaljigsaw, all one word, @bbc.co.uk.